Welcome to the Hospitality Maverick podcast with me, Michael Tixer. We at Hospitality Mavericks are here to inspire leaders to create hot and profitable businesses from the inside out, the kind that both employees and customers love and support. And I'm extremely excited to present you this week's guest, Drew Brown, the Managing Director of Dominion Hospitality. And Drew himself has a solid background in hospitality and leisure sectors from Travelodge, Whitbred and the Bannatyne Group and many more. And Dominion Hospitality has 20 locations across the south of England. They operate hotels, leisure, restaurants, bars, pubs and nightclubs, so a multi-revenue operator. And regional, which I think is very exciting to get some stories from the regional side of the industry. And Drew, he will tell you about his journey through the pandemic, how they have and will adapt. He also gives a clear overview on what the challenges and opportunities are for regional operators in the coming years ahead. We'll also talk about the importance of leading from the front line, as well as how tech can help smaller hospitality groups a lot to find efficiencies. And Drew also gives some strong practical advice on what you can do right now to survive and thrive in this storm. There's some sound advice in this one, so enjoy. Welcome to the Hospitality Maverick podcast with me, Michael Tixer. And we are now approaching the middle of August, the last run of the school holidays. And the pandemic is still out there and it's happening. We are trying to find a way operating with it. And a couple of weeks ago, I connected with Drew Brown. We were talking about, different business has different challenges, being regional or being in London. And Drew comes from a regional business, and we're going to be talking a bit with that mindset on today and the interesting journey they're on. And besides, they're not only doing food and drink as part of their business, but also a lot of it is the hotel business, which in many eyes should be thriving with staycation. But I think, as Drew and I talked about, it's a challenging time to get all the things working together. So I'm really been looking forward to this conversation because it's so important that we remember that hospitality is such a diverse set of different business models. And this is definitely a business model we haven't had as a guest before here on the podcast. So I'm very excited to welcome you, Drew, to the podcast and looking forward to have this conversation.
Great, Michael. Thank you very much for the introduction. It's a real pleasure for you to invite me onto your podcast. As you know, I've listened to many of your previous podcasts and really liking the work that you do. And it's an absolute delight to be invited on. And hopefully, I can share some insight and maybe a little bit of wisdom along the way.
Yeah, and I'm 100% sure. And thank you very much for being such one of the loyal fans in the community. It's and the sharing and the liking you do. That's very important. So it gets out to more people. But for people who doesn't know who Drew is, first of all, can you give a short, called the elevator pitch of your background and story and what you're doing today with the business you're part of?
Yes, I'll keep it short. I suppose I've got a mixed sort of hospitality leisure background. I've held senior management roles with Whitbred, working with Premier Inn, Whitbred restaurants. I've worked for Travelodge, also been a general manager for Thistle Hotels, so running large city centre hotels. I spent a period of time with the Bannatyne Group, working with Duncan Bannatyne. And I've also turned my hand at running race courses, ran a couple of race courses going back a while, and actually started my career in the health and fitness industry, running health and fitness clubs. And now currently I'm the managing director of a business called Dominion Hospitality. So we operate 18 sites across the south of England. So as Michael said, a regionally based business, but we go from sort of Eastbourne down on the sort of south coast, right the way across to sort of Glastonbury, and then sort of up to Tewkesbury, and pretty much everything sort of in between. As Michael said, we're sort of multi-channel business. So we have pubs, restaurants, hotels, and I also have one nightclub currently as well.
How has all this the pandemic lockdown been to you guys? Because I guess right now is normally the time of year where you should be really busy and doing really well. And there's a lot of people that's talked about this kind of staycation trend. But has that happened? And what's actually happened during the pandemic, and what has it meant for your business? All this.
Yeah, I mean, like most, I mean, I can remember where I was, what was happening at the point the announcement came through. I was stood in a hotel in Marlow, followed straight away by getting all of the GMs on a conference call and closing down the business. And like most hospitality professionals, we're sort of action orientated people. We sort of get on with things, we get things done, and it was relatively sort of straightforward and easy to shut down the business and sort of put it into I suppose, a sort of period of sort of hibernation. And then I sort of took on the role, I suppose, I sort of call it a cheerleader role, which is probably the sort of governing communication, well-being, and really sort of monitoring the sort of engagement of the team as everybody was furloughed. I think one of the other things that certainly in the sort of pub industry that maybe a lot of people haven't seen is that the 40 odd thousand pubs across the UK, most of the landlords live in those businesses. And it was the same for us, that our general managers, actually, it's their homes as well as their workplace. So, we then had a situation where you're managing people within their homes, within the workplace, which, was quite interesting. Like most, most businesses out there, I had, weekly video calls with all the GMs. I set up a WhatsApp group with everybody, which is still actively going now. We try and bring a little bit of humor in. So, the WhatsApp group's called the COVID Club. We had a sort of a kind of newsletter we continue to do every week called the GM Survival Guide. And that had lots and lots of things that people are up to, mainly, painting and doing their gardens and all of that sort of stuff. But we kept all of that going to try and drive a degree of engagement in the business. We're in this together, normality. So we didn't lose that. And we also ran a very successful charity weekend. And this was during lockdown. So, we ran a quiz. We had 40 people on a sort of charity quiz. But we had, one of the general managers actually run a marathon in the courtyard of his business, literally running back and forwards all day.
How big is that courtyard?
It's not very big. It's not very big. And, I take my hat because it's a cobbled courtyard as well. It's not straightforward. So, and he was pretty much running most of the day, but, raised over £1,000 for charity doing it. Had that on Facebook, did Facebook live messages. So, I think from a team perspective, during the lockdown, and it's something I'll come on to talk about a little bit more, but I actually think that we've got closer as a team, as an overall team, because we've gone through this shared experience. And I will talk about that a little bit more because it's quite relevant now that we're open and operating. In terms of the business, like most businesses, I mean, the initial period was very scary. We're watching cash flow out of the business, and there's nothing coming in. With the sort of various measures, we've kept the business going. We're now open and trading all but one business, which is our nightclub. And again, I'll come on and talk a little bit about what we've done to get the business open, and what we're going to do to get our nightclub open and trading. I think during the actual lockdown, I'm not saying it was a positive experience, but I think I've really sort of tried to get everybody to connect together, and our level of communication has probably been better in terms of that lockdown period than it has in the trading period of the business. I think, in terms of my time, if you can imagine a sort of hotel business, we spent a lot of time trying to defer hotel bookings. And certainly, as you rightly pointed out, Michael, at this time of the year, we'd be operating our hotel business at around about 90% occupancy. So, we've also, by the way, gone through the Glastonbury Festival, which was cancelled, and we have 3 hotels around the sort of Glastonbury area. So, all of those sort of big festivals and events that drive, people into those areas and drive occupancy all disappeared. So we spent a huge amount of time trying to defer hotel bookings and save the cash and save the revenue, and then obviously then dealing with people who want refunds, cancellations. We ourselves had events on, we ourselves had weddings. So, there was a huge amount of then trying to do the right thing for the customer and balance that off, I suppose, with doing the right thing, for the business. And again, I think we've managed to navigate relatively unscathed through that sort of process. I think in terms of, you talked about the sort of staycation, and, we have a staycation sort of program in the business now to try and sort of stimulate sales. And certainly what I'm seeing within the hotel industry that, those hotels and businesses that are close predominantly to the coastline. So last week, Plymouth, as a market segment in the hotels had the highest occupancy rates of 92%. But that doesn't necessarily relate to you then zoom to the other end, and London had an occupancy level of 27% last week. So, there's a real sort of difference in dynamic going on here, which is completely different to what anybody's ever seen around hotels. Yes, normally at this time of year, hotels by the coast would be full, but actually normally at this time of year, London would also be trading at 90%, and the rest of the industry would be probably trading around sort of between 80 and 85% occupancy. I've mentioned to you this before. I think hotels is getting left behind, within the hospitality industry. There is week on week improvement in occupancy levels, but actually, the average daily rate's down. So it's decreasing in order to maybe drive a little bit of that occupancy. So I'll come on probably talk about it a little bit more in terms of maybe when we talk about, where do we go from here? But I do think more needs to be done, around generating the staycation idea. We're not, as Brits or as English people, we're not into staycations. We like to, get the lard on and, get our little handkerchiefs on our heads and, get on the plane off to Spain, Greece, or wherever. We're not great at staying in our own country and exploring it. And therefore, maybe the infrastructure within, the UK is not particularly pointed at staycations. So, again, the probably needs to be a lot more done, to try and encourage and support the infrastructure around staycations in the UK.
What about, I say, one thing is like getting people to do staycation, and it's definitely a trend. And it's interesting you're saying that. I heard somebody else I talked with from the hotel world the other day. He said there's a confidence things and a trust thing, but there's also knowing what you can do on a staycation. Because the thing is, you said very, very well, he said the same, that people don't know how to plan a staycation. It feels almost too much work. And there's so many gems around in the areas where you are as well, around the coast. Beautiful scenery, beautiful nature, places to go where you can be very safe to be. But again, there's some education about how do you actually plan that perfect holiday. But have you also been impacted, because there's a lot of hotel people I've heard, and also restaurant people, talking about the business traveler, how that's impacted stayovers and eating out on weekdays and so on?
I think that most of our hotel business currently is leisure business. So, they within the sort of hotel sort of industry, that there's definitely a profile of a leisure customer versus the profile of a corporate customer. And then when I say corporate, I'm probably, not necessarily referring to construction and trade. There is also another market around construction and trade. So we've definitely seen sort of an uptake in more leisure customers, probably more so than maybe we would see. The corporate market is pretty much not there. It's non-existent. We are seeing a bit more of an upturn in the sort of trade construction market. So yeah, I think you've got very sort of distinctive sort of groups of people out traveling. The corporate side of things, we're just not seeing that, and potentially that could be due to people keeping an eye on spending, and also that people are working from home and finding other ways rather than travel. So rather than traveling and staying over, people are potentially will be opting to have a conference, a video conference meeting rather than traveling and incurring the cost. So yeah, it's quite an interesting sort of dynamic in terms of the different customers that we're seeing in the hotel side of things.
How is it then in the coming months ahead? Because I guess now there is a bit of help from more people out traveling, even though you wish there was more people out doing staycation. I don't know if you had any positive impact of the eat out help scheme, but how's the months ahead? Because summer holiday finish soon, and the kids are meant to go back to school, and then you're into the winter period. How will that look for you? How's the journey ahead for you, and how do you see you do that transition in a successful way?
I think the Eat Out to Help Out scheme's fantastic. I mean, one of the things, just sort of thinking through, everything and taking a step back, and looking at our business and looking at the industry, is that, I think the hospitality industry at the moment has got a huge opportunity, just with the exposure that it's been given. I think, without necessarily reeling off, names, but UK hospitality leading and lobbying the government on behalf of the industry, I think, has done a phenomenal job. So, campaigns like Eat Out to Help Out, I think, is a great, it's a great start. And I'm sure there are lots and lots of businesses that are benefiting massively from that. But it's not the final sort of, it's not the full package, and it's not the final solution. I think now the industry, given that we've got this increased visibility, I think, the industry has a responsibility to start sort of drive its own destiny. And as I said to you, at the front of this, I think the hotel industry has been left behind. I don't see a huge amount coming out visibly from the hotel industry, although it sits under the UK sort of hospitality banner. It seems as though pubs, very proactive. There's some great pub groups out there, great leadership out there, as well as casual dining, and again, some great companies, some great leaders out there who are really pushing, the industry forwards. But whilst, as you know, Michael, whilst the high street and retail is in complete disarray, I suppose my fear is probably for the more high street businesses. And we do have businesses in towns and city centres, and you can clearly see that any businesses in a town and a city centre is not performing well. Our businesses that are slightly out of town or in smaller sort of suburban areas are performing a lot better than those in towns and cities. And then, I think about, moving it on, and as you said, how do we then, transition? I think there's probably this bit in my mind, which is, we've still got to keep safety first. So I think, in terms of operating the business, one of the things I was very conscious about when we set up, all of our sort of safety parameters and how we're going to operate the business, that we don't become complacent, that we don't fall back, because I think, again, I take a responsibility on, behalf of the industry that, we are promoting this level of trust that you said, we need to portray this level of trust in the business and the industry. That's really important. So I think we've got to take that with us whilst this pandemic is still around, and ensure that, we are still maintaining those safety measures. We can actually build and grow trust. So it's not as though, right, job done, we put these safety measures into the business, we can then move on to something else. I think, certainly whilst the pandemic's still around, we've got to be really cognizant that, every day, every time we open the doors, we're now operating under a new risk environment. So I think that's really quite sort of critical. I think then, in terms of moving forwards, and I know a lot of businesses will be looking at this, is then how do we sort of dial up different parts of our business? And, as explained, we've got, quite a few different sort of levers that we can pull in the business that I've got. But, how can we promote and drive, staycation business across the sites? And as you said, as schools go back, I think there'll be a bit of a transition point. And maybe that's at the point that we see maybe slightly older people, maybe a little bit more nervous about coming out, staying out. we need to probably work a little bit harder in terms of saying, actually, it is okay to come and stay in a hotel. It is okay to travel. These are the safety measures that, that we've put in place, and actually you can have confidence in that. So I think we will continue down that road and hopefully transition from, more of the sort of family leisure business into maybe the sort of the grey market, that will still be out there, that will still be probably looking to stay, but might be a little bit nervous that they're seeing pictures of, packed beaches and, busy towns and, pictures of cars parked all over the roads down in Devon and Cornwall. That will end, potentially as the kids sort of go back to school, and hopefully, people who've got sort of families potentially then start to go back to work as well. So I think we'll piggyback on the back of that in terms of maybe looking at some of the packages and sales incentives and some ways of communicating that maybe slightly differently towards the sort of grey market. For us, the Eat Out to Help Out scheme has had some impact in some of our businesses. I mean, across the individual sites, we've got 4 of our sites are actually performing way ahead of last year, which is quite interesting. But we've also got some that are performing, way back on last year. So, that has had an impact in some of our businesses. And then we're looking at all sorts of different, things that, we can be quite creative around. I'm not restricted. We don't have a brand. I view the business as a family. So each one of our businesses, actually, we can be quite sort of agile. We can sort of reach outside the box and look for new and different ways of operating. We can do basic things like flex the hours, but we can also go and talk to other operators. And I started having conversations with other operators about potential partnerships. So we've got an ongoing conversation with a successful restaurant operator, and we're talking to that person about, actually, is there an opportunity here for a win-win? Actually, could we operate a very successful sort of restaurant business that's got a very successful following, but actually almost implant that restaurant business within our hotel, and actually that starts to create a really nice partnership, and potentially a win-win. I think the other thing, and it will sort of lead on potentially to the future, that we've spent a lot of time on, is how can we maximize the outdoor spaces that we've got. And I think that's worked really successfully. So, I've been busy sort of buying marquees, looking at outdoor furniture, looking again at creative ways of planning and spacing outdoors, about having separate outdoor areas for smoking and separate outdoor areas for non-smoking. So we've spent quite a bit of time looking at outdoor areas, and the sort of next phase of that and the transition of that is, how can we sort of weatherproof it? How can we make it, good for the coming months, to still allow that flexibility in space? People seem to sort of gravitate, when you watch people in a sort of a pub or even a restaurant environment, they tend to gravitate to outside. And I don't think that will change anytime soon. So, how can we ensure that, we have outdoor spaces that are, set up, not just for the sunshine, but set up for the winter. And in one of the sites, we've put a 50-inch TV screen out, covered it, put a marquee in there, so that people can come and have a drink and continue to watch football, but sit outside, have space, have confidence in the sort of fresh air. So we're looking at different ways to sort of flex what we've currently got to try and follow follow the customer, and look at the sort of changing need of the customer across all the sort of different parts of the business. The other thing, as we sort of transition, I suppose, into the next phase, is that I mentioned that we've got a nightclub, and anybody who has got and operates nightclubs, there's been very little, in the way of guidance. There's actually been not a great deal of information, from the late night industry, in terms of actually, what can we do as an industry to move this forwards. So, we are looking to open our nightclub as a late night venue at the beginning of September. We're going to take it really slowly, really easily. There's going to be, no live music, no dance floor. but we'll revert to table service. We'll try and dial up the customer experience. So we'll be doing things like cocktails at the tables. We'll try and really lift it up. But our capacity in a nightclub goes from 450 down to 150, 160. So so we want to sort of want to keep moving, keep moving and keep adapting the business in line with I suppose in line with the sort of changing sort of customer.
Interesting with all these different revenues you have, and yeah, multiple revenue and different types of business in different location, and I guess also very different customers, I guess, across those venues and needs you need to apply to. It's not like you can have a one simple corporate strategy, as you say, saying these are the three things we need to focusing on the next 3 months. You actually need to go into each of these business models and actually redefine what can we do with what we have, what can we flex, as you call it very nicely, and what do we need to put in place to actually on a longer term to still be able to grow the business locally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm currently working with each of the general managers. I mean, like most companies, we still have a proportion of our business furloughed. I do take my hat off to our sort of people in HR and payroll, and because we've now got people are furloughed, people are flexi furloughed, people are actually working. So, again, probably very similar to a lot of organizations. We're facing into the headwinds, and we're facing into the future, and we're up for it, and we're driving really hard into it, but we're still doing it, with not with our fully resourced sort of business. So there's a really sort of fine balance there. But I'm working directly currently with the GM specifically on, okay, let's look at each of the businesses. Let's look at what's working and whether we can dial that up. And let's look at where there are new opportunities, and actually can we go after those opportunities. So you're perfectly right, Michael, in terms of the fact that each of our businesses is very unique, very individual, and they have to be taken and looked at, on those unique individual sort of basis, which we're working through. And I suppose then it just comes down to the quality of I suppose the quality of the general managers that you have, and the sort of talent, but also given sort of good, strong guidance, and I suppose a continued focus on, as operators, we all tend to sort of get our heads down and sort of chop wood. But actually, if you're looking more strategically and more at sales growth and building, you can't just put your head down. You actually need to do both. You do
Yeah.
need to have your head down and chop wood, but you need to also have your head up and make sure that you're looking for opportunities. You're looking you're looking to sell. And one of the interesting things is now we are, I was having a conversation with one of the general managers yesterday, and they're like, we're absolutely delighted. People can't stand at the bar anymore. And I said, well, why is that? It's because we can actually sell more. The bar's now more visible. People actually can approach the bar when they know they can order something. But actually, because we're delivering at table, because we're ordering, people are placing orders at table, it gives us a greater opportunity to sell. And that was identified from general manager saying, actually, this is a potential, was a potential sort of safety measure that was a barrier. Now actually we can flip it into a positive, and hopefully drive some additional sort of sales through it.
It's super interesting with this environment, as I've heard it from others, people that's been on the podcast. You're just forced to test and try out things, even though your initial gut feel or business sense says this is not going to work. And sometimes there come some amazing things out of it. And one of the things I really admired, and you've probably seen it in your business as well, that how quick things can actually change when you need to. And I think that that's a beautiful thing, because that's what we need right now, just to survive and bounce back to whatever the future looks like. Is that we just need to make the things we can make work in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I think in all of this, the reason why I'm in hospitality is because it's a people business. You know, our business is about people. So, and as I said earlier, we've all gone through this shared experience. Whether you're, CEO of a FTSE 100 company, or you're like me operating a smaller business, or You work in the kitchen, you work in housekeeping. I was having a conversation yesterday with some housekeepers about, how did it go for you? What happened? Where are you now? How are you finding things? So, and it was a point where we were talking about the same things. So, and again, I think that's a really big opportunity, I think, for us as business leaders or operators, to really sort of keep socially distanced, but really sort of touch each of our team members and sort of check in with them and talk to them and engage them, because we've all gone through the same thing. And every single one of the people I've spoken to across the business have raised to the challenge, have taken things on board. I was talking to a chap who works behind one of our bars yesterday, whose mother works in the hospital in intensive care, and he comes in, he wears a face mask and a screen, and I chat to him initially, why are you wearing a face covering and a screen? And he was, because my mum works in the hospital and I live with my mum. So but behind all of this, I suppose we're a people business. We're a people driven business. So throughout all of this, it's probably the most important part of what we're going through, and also about where we're heading, as a business.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I talked with a very senior person from the industry, and been through a couple of crises in his lifetime. And he said to me, "It's all. This is all." He said from the outset, early on, he said, "This is gonna be all about caring for your people. The rest is just change. But if you care for your people, then you will be stronger, standing on the other side, and potentially stronger." He said. And he's been absolutely right. And there's no doubt about it. I see the one that's really, there's no one that's really having a massive success, but actually are not drowning in problems, are probably the one that has actually been trying to balance this. Because how do you take care of your people also when you have to tell them they can't come to work, furlough them, or maybe even people
Yeah.
have to, you may have to make people redundant, even though you don't want to, but you're just forced to. I think Danny Meyer talked about it in New York as well, because the US is a very different system than here in the UK. But so how do you do that and still keep the humanity in what you're doing? And I think, I think there will be winners on that side. Another thing you mentioned just before, Drew, that's very interesting, was that you said that technology in a way have changed the way you are serving customers, and you're actually selling more now out of some bars because of the technology. I guess there was some ordering and table technology in play there. Can you talk a bit about technology's role, maybe pre-pandemic, and how it's been used in during the pandemic, and how you see that in your business as you go forward, and the industry for that sake?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably sort of within our business pre-pandemic, I think I sort of probably look at technology, given that we do have a sort of commonality, I suppose, across all of our sort of sites. But I probably look at technology as almost technology light. So rather going for these sort of big, technology sort of driven applications and systems, what I've tried to do is identify smaller, more agile bits of technology that can really sort of pinpoint specific things within the business. And I suppose just to sort of bring that to life, so pre-pandemic, I put in a very sort of very simple sort of stock ordering, purchasing bit of technology. I put in some technology within our sellers that tracks what we're doing. We put in again very light technology, light scheduling system for our managed business, and then we identified specifically where we thought we could get some benefit from bookings, online bookings for our more sort of food driven businesses. So we've got a package, because we're not a large company. So we don't, I worked for Whitbred and did 2 years in a change in technology role. We don't have a technology strategy. We're very light on our feet, and look at almost picking out these really easy to sort of implement into the business bits of technology that are very cost effective. So, and actually in a smaller business you can drive almost a similar result but by keeping it quite light. So rather than looking at these sort of huge sort of applications and big change programs. That being said, I think as I suppose as the industry sort of moves, and certainly at this point, one of the things I've seen is that a lot of sort of companies coming out saying, look, we've to your point, really, they've been sort of forced into change and forced into adopting technology, but at pace. And I suppose one of the things that I suppose people might want to consider is that change in technology can't be shortcutted. So there potentially is a little bit of a sort of maybe a risk, and potentially some businesses and maybe us as well might have to sort of backtrack, because actually implementing technology is about changing behaviour. And unless you've understood, I suppose, how you're changing behaviour, given that we are a people-led business and that technology will drive changes in behaviour, I suppose unless you've really sort of understood what behaviours you're looking to see with the new change and implementation of technology, there is a huge risk that technology will fail. And actually, you go from something called installing technology, as in job done, we've put in technology, we're now on to something else, to implementing technology. And implementing technology really is all about understanding behavior. So it's not necessarily understanding, well, what's the technical specification of, this bit of technology or this application. It's understanding, well, what drives behavior, because behavior drives benefit. Technology doesn't drive benefits, the behavior that drives benefit. So, and I think, maybe some time and maybe some focus might need to be spent on maybe going back and looking at, well, how does technology impact our team? How does it impact their behavior? And are those the behaviors that we expect to see? And if there's not, there might be a little bit of almost retrofitting, because in the ideal world, done some big technology sort of stuff with Whitbred. In the ideal world, you take your time, and you ensure that people are ready, and you do all of the hearts and minds, and you get people to buy into technology change. But given actually, quite a lot of businesses had a bit of a gun to their head, they've sort of leapt at this. And, I take my hat off to a lot of them, because, some of the advances that I've seen in technology, that have taken weeks, months, potentially would have taken years, and actually might not have even got there in the end. So I think, there's that boost in technology, which I think is great for the industry, but maybe there might be a little bit of sort of backtracking on the sort of behavioural side. I think specifically when it comes to us, I think I will continue to look at technology options, but keep it very light. The only sort of area that I think's again quite interesting is the hotel side of things. So I think this move towards I suppose contactless from booking to sort of check in, and again a brand that springs to mind is the Hub with Whitbred, where their whole purpose is that I can book a room as a customer. I don't have to have contact with anybody. Everything's done on your phone. I can order stuff. It comes to my room. I can change the TV on my phone. I can do everything. I'm in complete control, but I'm not actually interacting with any person. I think that's a very, very interesting area in terms of technology developments. And I think, a lot of companies are very close, if not already there, to having the capability of being able to book a room, check in on your way there, get the code for the room key, pop your phone on the key, it opens the door, go onto the app, switch the lights on, switch the telly on, order room service comes to your room, you check out, and you haven't seen a person, in your whole experience. So I think that's quite interesting. And then the other bit of technology I'm looking at the moment is a bit of upsell technology, which is really interesting. So it integrates into the hotel booking system. And it's a machine learning algorithm, which sounds very complicated and quite techy. But basically what it does is it identifies within your booking system who hasn't booked breakfast, who hasn't booked dinner, and actually it sends them communications to say, look, we've noticed you haven't booked breakfast, or we noticed you haven't booked dinner, or it could be something else that, we've noticed, that you're here for 3 days. And so it can then pick that up within an algorithm and actually start to automate some of the conversation, and then repoint them back into the booking system to then, encourage them to sort of transact and, upgrade their room, or book breakfast or book dinner. So I think those bits of technology, I think, are quite interesting, and certainly something that, I'm actively sort of looking at for our business. But again, whilst try to keep it quite light, and very agile, just due to the sort of nature of our business. I think the other thing that's quite key with technology, and the light bit, I suppose, you would relate to actually, well, we don't want to invest huge sums of money as well. So, there's a relationship between light and cost effective and value, getting the value back quite quickly on these bits of technology. But the other bit with technology that frequently happens is people view the project of technology as is installing the technology and then move on. And I think the other thing that, both myself and maybe others should take time is this bit around benefits realization. And it comes back to, is the behavior change bit happening? Because actually, if technology and change is going to succeed, then actually, we have to be able to sort of, measure the benefits. Have we realized the benefits? And if we haven't, are we learning from it? And then, go back around and potentially share those learnings with other people as well. So, I think there's a really interesting bit now around technology change, and behavior, of the industry, but it's moving at pace. You can see the pace of change is rapid.
I think you said some very interesting thing there. You said that, not just technology for the sake of technology. What I got out of it, Drew, is that it's important understanding how it actually benefits, especially in your situation where you have different business models. Does this actually, give the managers time or the employees time to do either better hospitality, or can we just save time so thereby money? Or can it make money for us? As you mentioned, an example of upselling, which I think is going to be very key as well as we go forward. How can technology help on this upselling? Because every pound extra you can get on a booking or on a meal right now is going to be a lot worse for you. And I think that's where it becomes key, the technology. And I think there's a lot of technology out there, but it hasn't really been tested. I think you said that as well. And now there's a lot of it that's put to the test in a way. It's used in a totally different way than it was before. So maybe actually a lot of tech has to change again to drive the right behavioral change, because we often forget that when we implement tech. It's like anything else we implement in our business. It needs follow up, reflection, adjustments, and then suddenly it works because it becomes an integrated part in how we do things here. So yeah, very, very interesting observations and thoughts you had.
I was just going to add, Michael. I mean, one of the things I spent most of my time actually when I was with Whitbred and, doing this role around technology and change was readiness. So, and, I sort of carved out a program for Whitbred around readiness. And actually, it's a bit like anything. Actually, you need to spend most of your time in the preparation part rather than the sort of, implementing part. And, it's that readiness bit potentially that's been really squeezed, for a lot of businesses, because they just haven't had the time, to actually do the readiness bit of change, was actually probably the most critical part. So I think a lot of businesses might have to navigate their way back through that, almost just to check that actually, and I don't think there's any, I can't say there been any sort of harm or consequence, but there needs to be intent almost to, well, let's just go back and just check, that we're actually seeing the behaviors that, we expected to see in the business. So.
I totally agree. With tech moving at that pace, as you talk about, and you can see that becoming even more important, but especially tech that adds value here and now. How does this future then look for a business like your, in general, hospitality? Because you have so many irons in the fire with nightclubs, hotels, food and drink, and pubs as well. How do you see that the whole industry are going to move here? Let's say it's a difficult question to answer, but the next 12 to 18 months, how do you envision them, as with the knowledge we have today?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, probably breaking it down in sort of bits. I mean, I think the hotel industry sort of concerns me more than any. I think, the pub side of things is very, is very robust. I mean, there's a sort of old saying, if you want to get a good return on investment, invest in pubs or bookmakers. They tend to be quite, robust and resilient businesses. But I think the sort of pub and drink side of our business is standing up quite well. The food side is okay. The hotel side is one of the ones that concerns me, and I think just going back to the fact that I think probably a lot more needs to be done around staying, staycations, but staying and traveling within the UK and actually utilizing hotels. I think, for us, the future, as I said, for, we're up for the fight. Each week we've been open since the 4th of July. We've improved week on week. I do keep on looking slightly ahead and think there's a plateau coming. And when we hit that plateau, what will we do next? But, we're working on that with, sales planning and, making sure that the GMs are focused and they've got everything they want. I think wider for the industry, I think that the hotel industry, as I said, concerns me. It's very difficult to slow down this industry. And I mean, there's, quoting a sort of couple of facts, but there's 840,000 hotel rooms in the UK, and that increased by 1.6% last year. And actually, it's due to increase the same this year. And the pipeline of hotels is very difficult to stop hotels opening. And where I live, which is in Oxfordshire, there are 7 hotels currently under construction. Now, the forecast within the UK industry last year, before the pandemic, was that the hotel performance in the UK was going to be flat, if not slightly down. And I know Oxfordshire was highlighted as one of the areas that was significantly down, forecasted before the pandemic. So I think that the hotel industry, may need to start looking at how does it diversify, the products that it's got, the space and the rooms. It's currently operating at sort of 40% across the UK. So, 140,000 rooms operating at 40%. And so, that's a lot of bedrooms, that's a lot of bedroom stock out there that's just not being used. So, I do think there's still an opportunity for things like Airbnb, which is going to come. I think there's a greater opportunity for apartment-led businesses or mixed-use businesses. So it's quite interesting seeing some of the mixed-use type businesses now that hotels are looking at, which is, shared hotel rooms with apartments, and really starting to sort of blend that sort of model. So actually, you've got your own space, in an apartment. You've got a kitchen, and you can set that up, but you can also go and stay in a traditional sort of hotel bedroom. So, but I do think there needs to probably be some thought about really stepping back at the UK hotel market. Where does it go next? I mean, our biggest hotel operator is still probably opening 1 hotel a week, and it's fairly aggressive, and some of those markets now are getting really squeezed. So, and I think that leaves us as a small sort of operator. We do tend to depend on markets being full, so we are more successful when there's actually, there's less supply in the market. So, you get oversupply in the market, we tend to do less well. And it'll be the same for a lot of smaller businesses. I'm not going to ring the bells of doom that then those smaller businesses are going to, go out of business, because they tend to be a little bit more sort of nimble and creative in the way that they can encourage people, into the hotels. I think, again, this is a bit broad, but, back to the question about staycations, we're not a nation of staycation. And actually, I was sort of thinking about this. When you think about, well, where can you go that's like being abroad, and especially in a sort of a resort type business? And we've got centre parks. There's not many centre parks, although one's recently opened in Ireland. You've got Butlins, so you've got something that's a bit more premium, something that maybe is a little bit more sort of value and family led, and I think maybe throw Pontins in there. But we haven't got a great we haven't got a great deal of resort-led businesses or locations within the UK. And again, certainly in the future, surely that must be an opportunity for us to actually start to look at, where can we have more resort-led businesses that actually you can book and everything's there. Brits, when they go abroad, most Brits, not me included, but they want to go into a resort where everything's there. They can roll out the pool into a bar. They can then roll out to their favorite restaurant, and everything's on hand. So yeah, I think the hotel side of hospitality is really interesting, but I do think there's the backdrop of oversupply. I think then in terms of I suppose the big winners that I would see now and potentially in the future, and I see and look at some very, very, I suppose, role model type businesses. And these are the sort of food-led pub businesses. So we do fall into that category in some locations, but you can see some of these businesses being really successful because actually they offer great food and dining experiences, and in some cases, very, very good food. You've also got that combined with actually I can go out and I can select a dining experience with my wife, or I can go out with my friends and we can sit in the bar. My wife could go out with her friends and sit in the bar and have cocktails, but we could also go outside and sit outside, with the family and have a nice meal with the family or invite friends around. So the future really, these food-led kind of pub businesses that are maybe slightly destination, maybe slightly out of town, that've got a lot of outdoor space, that I've seen adapting a little bit like us in terms of big marquees or putting in sort of covered areas outside. I think they're going to be the sort of real winners. I do worry we've got some locations in towns and cities, and I walk past some of the restaurants. Some are still boarded up. Some of the shops are boarded up. Some of the shops aren't opening. And I worry about the high street. And I think possibly what I'm saying is maybe people who are going into the high street will start to go to these, sort of suburban type, pub restaurant locations instead. So I don't think the industry is going to lose the money, but I think the money may shift, potentially out the high street. And there's definitely an opportunity, I think, in very good food-led pub businesses with space. I think the other thing, the backdrop, certainly within food and drink, is I think healthy and sustainability are definitely going to be some of the things that are going to be paramount. I think with people, a lot of people being locked down and putting their lifestyles under a microscope and really focusing on hygiene. Obsessed now. Everybody's now obsessed about washing their hands and hygiene, and I think this kind of drive of healthy, and I relate healthy to trust. So healthy, trusted, sustainable type of businesses that can sort of demonstrate that, not just say, yeah, we're a sustainable, healthy business, but actually demonstrate what they're doing. And we can think of some brands that are already there, and I think those brands will start to really sort of win the sort of customer hearts and mind. But I think that healthy, sustainable will go down really well. I think a couple of other things. Obviously, we've talked about technology, but we haven't really sort of touched then on the sort of, I suppose, social technology side of things. And the social technology side of things is going to grow and grow and grow. Where you can connect food, drink, experiences, hospitality with your network, with your friends. I think that is going to continue to be a galloping trend. So I think businesses that exploit that or can sit, as part of that and encourage that and be part of it and interact and engage with it, I think will also do incredibly well. We haven't talked about delivery, but I think delivery will continue to grow and be really important. And then the other thing that's really close to my heart and my mind is family businesses, and I don't see a lot of them out there. So I've got a young family. I constantly sort of racking my brains. Where can I take the family? And I think again, I think everybody's looking at outdoor space. Certainly at this point in time, we don't want sort of crowding inside or tight indoor space. So I think the other thing that potentially might lead to is businesses that are really good at looking after families, really good at being able to utilize their space to be able to address and serve family customers. And I do think there's a gap. So there is a gap out there in terms of some of the sort of bigger national brands that had a very strong sort of family following seem to have diminished and disappeared, and actually I think it's left a gap in the family market. So I think there's an opportunity there really to sort of own that sort of family space, combine it with all of the other bits in there in terms of safety, trust, sustainability, health. And I do think there's a missing link. There's a missing bit in there around families.
That's super interesting now when you say it, and I reflected on with my own family. You're right, actually. That's a great opportunity for families in there. There's no doubt about. There's no one really working on that mindset yet, I guess. But again, like if you can make it feel safe for family and create that space and yeah, develop menus and all that actually then you have a great market, because I think many families feel they need to get out of their homes because they've been so intensely together. So they need these breaks sometimes to come out and discover some great hospitality. Some really good points there, Drew. And I think you're right about a lot of them. I agree with you. High Street, it's gonna be a bloodbath, I think, and I don't think we even seen the start of it yet, unfortunately. I'd say no matter if it's London or outside London, I think city center locations, it's gonna be a challenge. There's no doubt about it. It's gonna be a very hard journey ahead. But how do you keep sane in all this? Because you have so many different businesses on such a big geographical area, and I know you're cycling a lot. I know that because I know you're doing a really good thing, but by raising money. And but can you tell a bit about what do you do as an MD leader of your business to keep sane in all this? What is your top three hacks?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I'm achieving it at the moment, if I'm being honest. I mean, I think probably like most sort of people running a business. I mean, my head's just down, running as fast as I can, sort of chopping wood, and occasionally looking up and looking at where we need to be in the future. But it's you know, I'm probably working the hardest I've ever worked currently, and I like working hard. And I'm somebody that actually loves to work and work hard. But I think there's a couple of things. I think I suppose in terms of my sort of, if I can add anything in terms of my sort of top tips, I think one of them is I've talked about it, and I do think this is a time where leaders need to get close to their teams and their people. I do think this shared opportunity is a real experience to engage maybe people that previously haven't been engaged, and generate loyalty, and generate and embed and lock in trust with the teams. So I do think that's a real opportunity. I mean, since we opened, I'm now on my kind of third lap around the business. In fact, I'm on my fourth lap around the business. So and really that it's about being as visible as possible, and actually talking to every single team member. And sometimes when we're busy chopping wood and our heads down, that may sort of slip under the net. So I think get really close to your people. Use this shared experience as an opportunity to work closer together to become stronger and become better as a business and an organization. I think it's there. I think it's just whether that opportunity is taken and grasped hold of. I think the other thing about people is that don't underestimate the impact of change on your people and teams, because if there's a lot of change coming down the line, normally, I've seen this happen before. Maybe the leadership team thinks brilliant. We just implement some 4 or 5, programs of amazing change that's going to transform our business. But at the other end of that, you've got team members, general managers sinking, under the rate and pace of change. So the other part about getting close to your people is, really talk to them and understand, if you're implementing change, how is that impacting them? What are they managing it? Is it happening? And they'll sharp tell you if it's not. One of the great things about our industry, if you ever want to know how things are working and how change is being managed, just go and talk to the team. they won't hold back. They'll tell you. So I think that's probably one thing. I think the other thing is that comes down to probably your direct question, and I always think of, it's a bit of a cliche, but I think of Stephen Covey's sharpening the saw, sort of a bit, and I do think I think it's difficult when you have got your head down and you're in this sort of situation where it is a little bit fight and flight, and we tend to go, right, I'm going to fight, and I've said it, during our talk, we're up for the fight, we'll fight to win, we'll keep going. But at the same point, you've also got to look after yourself. And I think most people have probably had time to self reflect and probably committed to things. So probably committed to, maybe I'm going to be healthier, maybe I'm going to take more time out, maybe I'm going to exercise more, maybe I'm going to I'm going to do yoga, or I'm going to do meditation. And it then becomes difficult when you get into, right, the business is now moving at 1,000 miles an hour. I know I said I was going to exercise, but I haven't got time. I know I said I was going to, I was going to do some yoga, but I haven't got time. And I think it's, I tend to exercise very early in the morning. So, because it works for me. So I'll get up and out at, and exercise, from 6:30 in the morning. So, and I've stuck right the way through now, right the way through to exercising sort of 3-4 times a week. So I think it's somehow finding a way that you can allocate time for you, as a leader, when it's extremely busy. In fact, it becomes almost more important when you are moving at 1,000 miles an hour to separate, that 1,000 miles an hour with your own time, and invest in your own thoughts. Give yourself space to do what you want to do. To be able to really sort of get clarity of mind, and also recover your brain. Recover your your kind of thoughts, and look after yourself a little bit. So, and I am saying that to myself as well. So it's almost self-advice as I'm saying that. I'm kind of reinforcing it within myself as I say it, because it is hard. But I do think at times of there is an unseen stress, currently, and it's been happening since March. And it is an unseen stress because it's a pandemic. This whole situation for everybody, in the background is creating a level of sort of stress. So, I think you then combine that with moving a business forward at a fast pace and a rate of change. I think try and create a bit of space to step back and maybe look at what works for you. And then I think the other thing, which quite interestingly, it does make me laugh, the way that these sort of situations tend to drum up new words, and the new word that sort of springs to mind is pivot. And businesses being able to pivot. And I had a conversation actually with our chairman about pivoting, and I actually went on for about 10 minutes about if you don't pivot, then potentially you're going to be left behind. But if you pivot too much, you're potentially going to fall over. So it is about pivoting, but being balanced, maintaining your balance. Sorry. So and I mean, I've always used the word agile rather than sort of pivot, but pivot seems to be the new word on the street. But there was brilliant examples of this. During the lockdown, I had one with one of my local pubs turned itself into a shop, and was engaging with sort of local suppliers to bring in stock. So, it was still trading, it was still open, it was doing it in a safe way. But you saw this, really quick, agile pivoting of that business into actually, now retailing, and then combining that with sort of, takeaway and delivery. So, and I've spoken about, there might be an opportunity for us to partner up with other businesses to bring them in and actually run a stronger food operation. So I think this kind of pivoting and maintaining your balance, I think, is going to be really important, as we go forward, because it's looking for new revenue profit streams that will strengthen and broaden the platform of the business, going forwards.
Yeah, I think that was some super great advice, and I like the honesty around taking care of yourself. We all had this time in lockdown where there was a bit more time to do things, and we had all these good habits. And I'm guilty myself trying to keep those good habits, because I also understood that I need to be as fit mentally and physically as possible on the other side for my family, for my business, for my colleagues, because it's going to be a tough time ahead. And I think we actually talked about it, me and my wife, yesterday evening, how important it is that we try to keep that momentum, because how do you deal with the agileness? Because as human beings, we are not built to be switched on 24/7. We need downtime, as you said. So yeah, I think that's a very important. Maybe a bit. Some people say it's a bit cheesy, but I think it's very important, because I think that's the only thing we can be in totally control of in this period of time, and the rest is change. And we just have to progress within that change, and we can only do that, as you said, if we take care of ourselves first. So that was really good advice, sound advice there, Drew. So Drew, we are end of our conversation. This has been an absolutely amazing journey through understanding your business and what you're up to, and all the multiple revenue streams you need to be in control of, and the challenges that there is within the hotel industry as well. I think we got that addressed. So I would like to say thank you super much for your time. I know that you don't have much of it, and to come on and share this with the world and the community. I'm sure there's going to be some great learnings out there. Where can people find more info on you, Drew, if they want to connect with you after they listen into this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, completely open for people to connect. You can probably find me on LinkedIn. It might be the best sort of the best way to connect with me. But yeah, drop me a note through LinkedIn. More than happy to pick up with anyone else, have conversations, and share anything that I can share, which will be of value.
Super, Drew. So thank you so much again, and I'll send power and energy to your team and family as well to the coming time ahead.
Thank you, Michael. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
An absolutely amazing overview from Drew from what regional operators are up against when it comes to challenges, but also which opportunities still lies ahead. And also some great and interesting advice on how to approach technology in smaller hospitality groups. If you'd like to get inspired by a smaller operator, you should also tune in to episode 28, Operational Challenges on a Small Island, with Benjamin Heath, who is the founder and CEO of the Harbour Lights Group on the Isle of Man. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please give us a like, share, rate, subscribe to one of our channels. Tune in next time for another interview, and in the meantime, find out more about us and subscribe to our community and download free leadership tools at hospitalitymavericks.com. And thanks for listening, and be Maverick.